Hello, team. Welcome back to the Live Perform Compete podcast. Joining me today, Houdet. Andre, welcome.
Thanks for having me again.
Listen, we're going to cut to the chase. We don't need an introduction because we've done that already, given that this is your second time on the podcast. But a few things have changed since then. Notably, the CrossFit Games happened. You finally got there. You know, what I love about the first podcast, which is why I have to get Andre back on this podcast, was that was like your stake, your claim. And you were like, don't be afraid to say your goals out loud, as lofty as they may be. I will be getting to the CrossFit Games. And here we are, post you getting to your first ever CrossFit Games, finishing 15th. What's been going on?
Well, I mean, it's really satisfying looking back. I mean, we spoke in, I think, June last year, and it's just been amazing to accomplish that goal. It's been a lot of years in the making. So it's just, it feels a little bit unbelievable to have made it. But at the same time, one thing I was fearing after the CrossFit Games is that, you know, sometimes people have those posts like hitting a big goal, like blues and maybe just, feeling a bit empty and maybe deflated or demotivated. And I'll, you know, you can't really predict if that's going to happen for you. I obviously try to avoid that from happening by, just preparing myself mentally for it. And it luckily didn't happen, and quite the opposite. I felt super motivated afterwards, and it was like a new fire that kind of started. I was, you know, it gave me a sense of calmness having accomplished it, and that kind of made me feel that, how can I say it? That calmness gave me some sort of new fuel or fire to try to do more, because now I have done it. And now I don't think I'm going to be setting so rigid goals anymore, but rather like less tangible goals. So instead of saying next year I want to be top 5 at the CrossFit Games, like next year I want to smash Andre, who was at the Games 220. And I've heard this from a lot of the other CrossFit Games athletes also, like Justin Medeiros or Shane Orr, talking about Tia Claire Toomey's mindset. And I think that's just something I can relate to. Instead of saying I want to win the CrossFit Games, it's, you know, if I can beat the person I was last year by miles, then hopefully that leads to a better placement. But essentially just beating that person is all I can control. So I'm super motivated for the coming year, and I did not feel in a great shape. And I felt like there was so many things that were so far from being optimal that, hopefully, you know, fixing those holes and being in better shape, I can do better. That's at least what I believe, and that's what's going to keep me coming back for more.
So what is, you know, you said you had a fear of potentially accomplishing your goal and then feeling empty, but you prepared yourself for that. What did you do to prepare yourself that's now allowed you to not feel hollow and empty?
I think I've put a lot more focus on the path of getting there. So like the journey of getting there, being a little bit the goal, like of the hard work every day is what makes this journey amazing, and not so much being at the CrossFit Games, even though that was like an incredible experience, but it can never beat the thousands of hours in training by myself. And I think I've just always, I've tried to celebrate the small wins in training across the past couple of years. And I think that just prepared me to handle a bigger victory down the road. And I just think I'm going into, you know, every season with the mindset of there's no big peaks or no like deep valleys, but rather just, you know, small peaks and valleys throughout. And so the CrossFit Games never felt like a huge peak, even though it was just an amazing accomplishment. But, you know, life goes on and training goes on. And I still just keep the goal of trying to get better and better, regardless if I finish 15 for first or 30th or don't qualify. So I think just, you know, putting more emphasis on, you know, the process rather than the outcome just prepares you so much more for. So once you have accomplished that goal, it's just, you know how to move on.
Yeah, I think so many people share that experience where they create this lofty, amazing goal and they put it on a pedestal, and then when they achieve it, they realize that life is exactly the same. And life hasn't suddenly changed, but because you've achieved this thing. But I feel like remembering our conversation June last year, where the goal was the CrossFit Games. You'd written it on a blackboard behind you. It was something you were not scared to say out loud. It was like something that was motivating you every day to put in the hard work. I feel like your mindset has just changed a little bit. Was there something that had made you change? Was it the actual CrossFit Games experience, or was it en route to the CrossFit Games that you changed the way you're looking at it?
Like, it has definitely changed. So you're right, because that goal was so black and white. It was either I was going to make it, or I was never going to stop trying. And that's a little bit dangerous to have those kind of goals. And that's definitely not something I recommend a lot of people having. But I think just certain personalities like myself, I need to sometimes set up very extremes. And it's like, do or die kind of thing. And I'm not going to stop until it happens. And that's how it was with the CrossFit Games. And that is something dangerous to set up, because I can end up maybe never having that goal, having achieved that goal. And I would be pretty sad the rest of my life for not achieving that. And even if I'd given everything, but I think just being so black and white about it, it puts a lot of pressure as well. And it worked really well for me. But nothing is guaranteed in any sport, and especially not in ours. Like, there's a 4-stage season. There's so many things that can happen. For 6 months, you can't get sick once. You can't get injured, or if you get injured, you need to be able to manage it and make it through very tough cuts. And people get fitter every year, and there's just so many things that can go wrong. And so setting a black and white goal like that it's just something you never guaranteed achieving. And I know that would have been gutting for me for probably the rest of my life if I'd never done it. So the mindset have changed in that sense. So now it's less black and white. It's a little bit like I also mentioned in our first podcast. It's to get as fit as possible. I want to figure out how good I can be. If that's 15 for worse, or that's okay. Like, I just want to know now, what is it that I can do and how fit can I be? And I honestly think that makes me far more dangerous than last year, because now I don't have that fear of failing. That just gives me a whole, it's this complete different mindset from last year and from the past couple of years. Because I don't feel I have much to lose. And I think that's a really good position to be in. I'm not more laid back about it. I mean, quite the opposite. I'm trying to do even more than I've done the past couple of years. But I just don't feel that pressure, because I have this calmness. I promised someone to make that goal, and I promised myself to make that goal, and I did it. And now I don't feel I need to prove to anyone else what I can do. And I've proved to myself that I can get what I want. So now I just need to, now just try to, no pressure and all in as always. And I'm looking forward to see what that can lead to.
So what do you need to do to be a fitter version of 2021, Andre?
There's a lot of things.
And how will you know? Because I think what we're saying here is that the placing, if you make it to the CrossFit Games next year, or if you don't, that's not actually the most important thing. It's as long as I guess, are you looking at individual metrics within the sport, and you need to see improvement there? Is there like an intangible mindset piece that you want to see improvement in as well? What is it?
Yeah, there's obviously a lot of tangibles like strength numbers, weightlifting numbers. I would definitely be using like quarterfinals or semifinal workouts to retest for next year, because I definitely had some workouts I fell through in, and my goal is obviously to close those gaps so that I don't have such big holes. And the funny thing was that it was throughout the season, it was the same things I kept falling short on. And it's just basically my ability to do mixed modal CrossFit and, high high amount of contractions with very simple movement patterns. And especially when there's like a redirection of blood flow, like shoulder to overheads and then overhead squats, and just fast and a lot of reps. I think I'm more prone to be good at like power biased workouts, like workouts that are sub 3 minutes. Often the heavier the better, and those kind of things. So this year, and it makes sense because my training is so like divided into kind of the different themes of the sport. I do weightlifting, then I do only weightlifting, and then when I do strength, I do very strength focused session, and when I do gymnastics, it's just gymnastics, and then I do engine, and it's very engine biased. It's only running or biking or like, and so I haven't been mixing it a lot. I only start mixing in very late in the season, and I just found that, I mean, it's mixing it that's the issue for me. So
I'm just gonna interrupt you now real quick, because the very first time we ever spoke, you were working at Inner Fight in Dubai, and you were hosting a podcast, the Inner Fight podcast, and you had me on the podcast. And this was actually, I don't know if you remember, this was a conversation we talked about, and I remember it now that you're talking about it, which was like the importance of, for most people, and even high level athletes, like you said, like the importance of isolation, but also the importance of integration. Like you could be amazing at snatching in isolation, but when you combine snatching with muscle ups, it's suddenly a completely different thing. So what you're saying, that when you're reflecting back on your training last season, there was just a little bit too much isolation? Because obviously, I think context, again, you've taken over all your own training now, which again, like in this, actually not all your own training. You are working with Kasper, I believe. Who've had on the podcast. But so essentially you've taken over your own training. And are you saying now that was kind of a bit of something you've reflected on and realized that your training needed to have more of that, or?
Yeah, definitely. But I also think that in the past I shied away from it a lot because I used to have some niggles with my elbows or shoulders and stuff. And so mixing snatches and muscle ups in a workout, like, I was just gonna break me. So I had to isolate it a lot more and put in a lot more control settings, because that danger of fear of getting injured when I was already fragile was just too high. So I think I knew that I needed to do more of it, but I also just have fear of doing it. But doing all of the bodybuilding and all the strength work with Kasper has definitely given me just far more confidence with being able to do it, because in fact nothing really hurts anymore. And I mean, knock on wood and all that stuff. It's just hello?
Andre, you there?
Yeah, I don't know what happened.
I don't know what happened either. You just disappeared.
I just got it seemed like I got kicked out of the meeting.
Yeah, that's all good. We can just continue where we left off. Is your video working, Andre? It also says you're mute. Okay,
but I can't see yours. Can you? All right.
We back now?
Yeah, I can't see you, but
hang on. Let's check this Wi-Fi. We should be good.
Well, sorry.
I think it's actually okay from my end. How are you doing?
There you go. Yeah, I can see you now.
Okay, let's just give it a sec, because you're gone. You there, buddy?
Hello?
Andre?
Yeah,
I have no idea. Yeah, I have no idea what's happening. I think my Wi-Fi seems like
it just kind of kicks me out.
Let's just keep on talking. We're still recording, so no worries.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just quickly backtrack there. So we'll backtrack a little bit to the idea, because I heard all of it. It was just starting to cut out a little bit, but the idea of of isolating versus integrating, and the reasons why you just isolated it more. If you don't mind just sharing that bit again.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so in the past, I used to isolate a lot of things like muscle ups and snatches and just general mixed modal from each other, simply because I was a bit more fragile back then, and I was struggling with some small injuries, and so even though I knew that it wasn't kind of optimal to do it that way, it was my way of being able to continue still touching base on all the movements throughout the season, but having changed approach since last year, adding more, let's just call it bulletproofing and bodybuilding and 3D movement work, I've just been able to stay more healthy, and so this year it's going to be a very, very different approach. One of the things that I always used to really isolate everything, and I'll be do running, and then I'll be just specifically running. I'll do gymnastics, very specific gymnastics. And this year, like, my zone 2 work doesn't need to be 60 minutes of biking. It could be biking mixed with toaster bars or burpees or stuff like that, because I also realized that I think that the further you get into your career of CrossFit, and the better you get at handling skills, the lesser taxing it is also. I think, the top CrossFit Games athletes, they can also do muscle ups and being zone 2. They might not be able to do 20 ring muscle ups, and but if you were doing a 30-minute bike with a few muscle ups every second minute or every third minute or so, that's just a great way to get a lot of extra contractions in, and just work on getting extra volume in these things. And that's definitely something that I have changed a lot. It's a lot less purely monostructural and cyclical, and a lot more mixed, still hitting the same heart rate zones or effort levels that I was using last year, but now in a lot more mixed modal setting. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that will pay off.
I mean, it's so true. I think we always talk about the best athletes in the sport are able to make every movement aerobic. And I mean, like, that's been said for quite a long time. I mean, James Fitzgerald was the very first guy that started talking about that. And I think, but I also think the year and a half that you've spent isolating everything has been probably a really important part of this journey to now allow you to be a little bit more varied, a little bit more less structured, have more work mixed into your training sessions, because you just built such massive foundations in isolating. What do you think? Do you agree?
Yeah, 100%. That's why I also don't regret it. I think it was necessary. And I just think it takes a lot of work to be able to feel comfortable doing so much mixed modal work. Like, it takes time to build tolerance, in order to handle all the weightlifting and all the gymnastics and all the skills under fatigue. At least it has for me. And I think a lot of people can relate to it. And perhaps a lot of people mix it perhaps a bit too early, instead of kind of start mastering all of the elements by themselves, and then kind of earning the right to start integrating them more.
Yeah, no, totally. Your training right now, or I should say your kind of life right now, relative to when you were back in Dubai and you were working pretty big hours, squeezing in 2 to 3 sessions a day. We talked about this in the last podcast. You shifted things up a lot. You got, a gym in your own home. You probably based out your own home quite a bit. How healthy do you feel now? And I know health is a term we have to use carefully when we're dealing with high level athletes, but like, how healthy do you feel now relative to the past Andre who's competing in the sport?
Better than ever. That's for sure. I think I've had some excellent help, especially from Kasper Vinthers, who's my strength coach, that has really just made the world of difference for me. And then just also me getting smarter with my own programming and getting to know my body even better. And then just, having set up a life here a little bit out in the countryside, where there's just less distractions, there's less decisions to be made on a daily basis, which just makes the day-to-day decisions in terms of going to bed at a good time, making good nutritional decisions, good training decisions, maybe having the time to spend more time on mobility or recovery modalities. It's just made a huge difference. There's just less stress. There's like, I still go see my family once a week. One of the things I'm going to change for this coming season is that I'm going to go train with a large group of people once a week as well. Also to get just a bit more social aspect of it. I love training alone, and I think that's just, there's something special about that for me. But I also enjoy training with people, and so I think this coming year, I mean, not I don't think, but I'm going to be training once a week with a big crew. So
Let's talk about Kasper, because we've had Kasper on the podcast. He talked a lot about his ideas on training, and we use you as a case study a lot. So we've had the coach's perspective. I want to hear the athlete's perspective on how you've found, incorporating or adding him to your team firstly, but also the training. And I think there's not really many other people I know in the sport at this level who have also kind of integrated this type of training into their program. And when I say this type of training, like, a lot of machine-based work, like non-CrossFit gym style training. So like, one of the things you talked about is like, you've used the word bulletproof a couple of times already. And like, you feel like injuries have subsided. Like, tell me about, firstly, why did you hire Kasper? How did you find him? And then, what does the process look like now? And how do you feel? Because, as a result of integrating that into your training.
I mean, I'm going to start by saying that throughout the past 7 years, Kasper has been the most impactful coach that I've ever met. We don't have some sort of sponsored deal or nothing. I met him. I found him through social media because I knew some people that were training with him. I start, just following his posts and what he was doing, and I just sent him a message explaining what my goals were and what I would need from him if he was free or if he was available, and if it was something that he was offering. And I basically just wanted him to help me with 3 to 4 strength sessions a week in order to, number one, bulletproof me, which is kind of the term we use to express just feeling better overall. I feel like I just had a lot of nickels, and just getting down into an air squat wasn't feeling great unless I had warmed up for 30 minutes. And my warm-ups were getting longer and longer, and I was spending more and more time on like fancy movement work. And I was explaining that situation, and he definitely thought he could help with that, and then also just push my 1RM numbers and maximal strength, because that's also something that's just been a huge catalyst for me. And then he just said, yep, I can help you, but it's going to require one thing, and that's that you come every week and see me. Because handing out the program is only one part. Like, how you execute every movement will be absolute key. And at first I was like, how big of a difference can that make, But it turns out it made huge difference. And it's actually crazy how big of a difference having a coach that's great at cueing you. I mean, it's like the same when you're in a CrossFit class, right? And you have just this amazing coach who just knows exactly what to say, who knows exactly how to cue you. And I think everybody have had that sensation where it just kind of clicks for you, and all of a sudden you just feel stronger, you move better. And that was with him for every movement. And I could just feel that my power output was increasing. I could fire more muscles, or it was just different sensation. So we started working together, and we had like 4 months really good, leading up to kind of the quarterfinals. And then we still continued working together, but during the quarterfinals, semifinals, and leading up to the games, it was a little bit more chaotic due to the games training and all that stuff. So we still worked and did a lot of good stuff, but we had less expectations, of course, for pushing 1RM numbers. But it's been really incredible working with him. And like, I think I was in the mindset of, if it's not sport specific, is it even going to help? And I think that's maybe also how we're a little bit not brought up in CrossFit, but especially with who I was coached by before. Their mindset was also very much focused on specificity of the sport. Like, and Kasper was kind of the opposite. He had the mindset of, stronger muscle is a stronger muscle. Like, if I make your quads twice the size or twice the strength, like, you're gonna be squatting more. If we also, teach you to squat better, and that just worked for me. Like, and it also just cut off so much more volume from my training in terms of strength. Even though I was doing 4 strength sessions, they never made me feel beat up in any sort of way. Quite the opposite. I always felt great after. And that allowed me to push my weightlifting sessions much harder. And then I just saw a huge increase in my weightlifting numbers for like the first time in 5 years, because I was much fresher for them. And I was, I hadn't been doing 10 by 10 back squats the day before and just ended myself. I had maybe doing 8 by 4, and that was like a large volume session. But yeah, just, learning more about intention, execution, and just setting up exercises in a much more stable and isolated environment to get most bang for the buck for that focused muscle group has just really worked wonders for me, because we already do so much. I think people that are training for semifinals and games, they're already training 2-3 times a day. There's plenty of all the sport specific stuff. Like, you're already doing hundreds of thrusters and wall balls and maybe light clean and jerks and all that stuff and squats. And so you don't need to also be doing back squats 3 times a week to feel comfortable with the pattern. Like at the top level, it's not about learning how to squat. It's just, it's about getting stronger. And that doesn't mean you need to squat 3 times a week.
Okay, tell me what are the biggest lessons or learnings that you've taken out of this relationship working with Kasper?
I think there's a lot. Like, yeah, the thing about it doesn't need to be always specific to make you better at the specific movements.
Give me an example.
So if you need to squat, the back squat, like we've been doing hack squats, leg extensions, split squats, and hamstring curls and all these kind of things. And I've max been squatting once a week, literally like max once a week. And all my numbers have just been flying since. And it's the same with all the other numbers, same for my press and for my deadlift. And then my body also just feels much better. So I think just if it's programmed well, if it's executed well, if there's a good intention behind it, you can really cut a lot of unnecessary volume. And yeah, so that's like one of the main things. Another thing is that, yeah, I think just paying more attention to detail and I think I have been paying a lot of attention to detail in weightlifting and in gymnastics, but sort of strength always was just, bicep curls, right? Or like, but it's just not, it's complicated than that. And it's, there's 3 types of hypertrophy. 3 months ago, I would never have known that. It's like, it's just, it's a lot more complicated than that. And I'm a coach myself, and I love learning about these kind of things. So it's really fun to test it on myself. And I think that, the most important thing is that I've learned that I think isolated strength work is absolute key for anyone who wishes to be good in CrossFit, regardless if it's intermediate level or if it's the absolute world class. I think it should always have a time and place in the program, it's even for normal class members to some extent. Yeah, so I think that's just a few of the things that has been really eye-opening the past 1 year.
I know you've got your home gym. We're going to talk about no shortcuts in a little bit, but I know that you're also adding a lot of these machines to your home gym. What's the latest on your home gym? Like, what have you got on there? What are you adding to it? What do you want to create that you don't already have?
So I am going to purchase within the next couple of weeks, hopefully, a leg extension, a hack squat, and a dual cable setup. So those are going to be the 3 next potential purchases. Yeah, I'm looking to have a full equipped training gym that has everything. I want to have the best training facility that I can imagine, together with my fiance, and we love training. Training is a big part of our life, and if I think something is missing, I want to save up money to get it. And it's hard balance sometimes, because I also, like, I'm really sort of protective when it comes to money, and I always feel a bit bad when having to spend it, because I just always want to have a buffer and feel safe in that way. But I also don't want to have any regrets, and this is the hardest balance for me, because I keep asking myself, why do you keep waiting buying all of this equipment? Like, why do you keep waiting? If you had it all, would it be more optimal for your training? If the answer is yes, then you have to find a way to get it. Because waiting 2 years to get it, what could those 2 years have been for you, like development wise? And all that equipment is earned back just in one competition over the next 3 years. If I finish top 10 just 1 year, I mean, even 15th place, that's $15,000. And that's enough to pay for 4 or 5 machines. So I just try to, I try to balance that. I think that's just so hard, because it is sort of a sacrifice, like, what you want here. Like, I know I need it now, but somehow I feel bad spending it. And it's the same with work. It's one of the biggest struggles for me. Like, there's a lot of inquiries for individualized programming. It's not to say that I'm popular or anything, but I struggle to say no to them. But I know I need to say no, because I need to be single-minded to be good at CrossFit. And that career is not going to last, for so many years. And it's now or never. I can always take on plenty of clients when I decide to not train so much. But if there's just one trait I've learned, and that this is for me the only sacrifice, or the biggest sacrifice, is to be so single-minded. You have to focus on one thing if you want to be so good in it. And you can't just do 1,000 other things. Even if you don't think that it taxes you, it does. Like, even if it doesn't tax you physically, it can tax you, like, cognitively, like decisions and helping out. And so yeah, my goal, and I mean, this kind of, it's a little bit off the equipment, but it kind of feeds into it. There's one decision that I really want to make, and that's to almost cut down completely on my individualized clients, to focus 100% on training. And then I just want to buy all the equipment and just go all in. And because I'm just afraid that if I don't, that I'm just going to regret it. I'm going to think, if you had worked less, or if you had that equipment, maybe you could have been better. That's the only fear I have, honestly.
I mean, it leads nicely into my next question, which was basically about balance. You have your own training and your own athletic endeavors. You're engaged. You have your own business, no shortcuts, and you've got, I think, a group training platform there as well as individual. Like, how are you? I guess the first question is how are you balancing that? How do you make it all work?
I mean, it is to some extent quite difficult, because I want to do a lot of things, because I'm passionate about a lot of things. And CrossFit is not the only thing in my life. It's also not the most important thing in my life. And it has never been. My family is more important, and then training comes number 2. But so it is super challenging. I think, luckily, I started a group generic training program called No Shortcuts, and I love geeking out on programming, and I could really also get the chance to geek out on programming there, even though it's not individualized, which I've also really enjoyed. I've also enjoyed just this new type of path where I can, you can you can kind of get the chance to design the perfect program, because perfect program that I can design for now at least, because you don't have to adjust it too much constantly. If somebody has to go on holiday, or maybe have a nickel here and there, that kind of can mess up a little bit the path. And I've also really enjoyed helping people individually, guiding them through those challenges. But here it's a program that you can plan it 1 year ahead. You can get really geeky, and you can also do that with individualized, but you just can never see in the future what's going to happen. But with this program, you kind of don't need to, and that makes you just being able to somehow geek out a little bit more on it. And I've really enjoyed seeing that grow, and we've luckily been able to grow it a lot over the past year. So that has also allowed me to, it will allow me to cut down on my individualized clients, simply because I love doing it, but it's also very time consuming. One client will take me as much time as the whole generic program that has over 200 people on it. And so I'm finding myself in a difficult spot here, because it's also difficult to let go of some people, but you have to some extent also be selfish, because it's a little bit now and never with training. And I can feel that when I have a lot of clients and I get a lot of messages, I struggle to put myself in first, and then all of a sudden I'm training like 2 hours later than I originally planned, and then it messed up with my maybe like meals leading up to it, and then I feel a bit drained for the session, and then after the session I just hate myself. I'm like, why did you put yourself in this situation? Like, you need to prioritize yourself. This is it. If you don't do it now, it's never gonna happen. And you can always be full-time coach and get up at 5 a.m. in the morning and do everything you want with coaching, in years from now. But this athletic career, it's gonna come down to giving everything you have. And so, yeah, so actually the last couple of weeks I've done a lot of thinking about that, and I'm gonna make some big changes this year to just go for it. I couldn't do that before because we didn't have a generic training platform with a good clientele, but this year we do. And yeah, so it's gonna make it easier to balance it out, because I also have a family, and that also takes time, and it's not fair to not have any extra space in your head for them. And I could just find myself being poor at listening, or getting agitated for no reason, because I was stressed out with having to manage all the training and also managing all the clients. And so, yeah, so I hope that this year, and I don't hope, it's going to be better this year.
Do you have anyone else on your No Shortcuts team, or is it just you?
Yeah, I have a brand manager who helps with content creation in form of like taking pictures and videos. He also helps me with the back end stuff. Like if we get a lot of messages through the online coaching platform in terms of if there's a problem with payment or with the app or something like that, then he helps out with that. And he kind of just helps with everything. He's a great guy, and we met and developed a super organic, good relationship. And yeah, he just quit his job actually just to focus on helping me with No Shortcuts. And it's really cool. My fiance also helps with it. So we have a team of 3 right now, but we're actually adding 1 more person. So it's exciting to, we don't want to build a large team very fast. We want to just, bring on, find the right fits and create the right opportunities. I think the key for us is to develop career platforms for people. So if we bring on, for example, the brand manager, like what's the 5 and 10 year plan or vision for him? How can he grow? And how is there constantly every year a better incentive, or so it's not, not just the same, which is, I think, what we see in most CrossFit gyms. It's just they don't really provide a career for anyone. It's just, it doesn't matter if you've been there 1 year or 10 years, you get the same salary or you have the same opportunities. And I think that's one of the fun things of trying to develop this business, is to see how we can, set up a win-win for everyone, and something that everybody wants to work hard for, to push forward. And that's, I'm starting to really almost fall in love with that kind of process of also coaching and developing a business. It's like, how do we set up like how many ways can this business stretch, and how can we create opportunities for people 5 years down the road, so that even though day one, there might not be a lot of, let's say, a big salary or anything, but they can see that down the road, if they work hard and they create opportunities, they can really feel ownership, and they can make a great living off it.
Sounds like you're adding another stressor to your bucket, mate.
No, I'm trying to actually do the opposite, by like that, because that stuff is it's scalable, and it's kind of fun. It's something I don't need to scale it. That I think that's what I like about it. I don't need to work extra on it. I can just continue, just focus on making one good program, and then, if opportunities arise, and I mean, the goal is to set up, smart systems that allow me to not work more. Nice. And I try that my best.
It sounds like you check in with your priorities a lot, and you sound like you have a really clear hierarchy as to what is most important right now, probably all the way down to what's the least important. But when will, I mean, you've put family first, when will competing and CrossFit no longer be the priority, do you think?
That actually became very clear to me right after the CrossFit Games. Because after the CrossFit Games, I felt super motivated, but I felt super motivated because I felt like I wasn't in that great shape, and I felt like I could be much, much better. And I think the day that I finished my season, looking myself in the mirror, thinking, mate, you've peaked, or you're not willing to do more. Like, because every year it takes more. You can never just put in the same amount of work. It's always something needs to be better. You need to be better with your supplements, or your sleep, or your training, or recovery. Like, you're always looking to upgrade something. And I think the year that I'm not willing to make those upgrades, that's the year I will decide to go team. I think I'm always very honest with myself, and I do it because I love to compete, and I love training also, but it's because I love to get better. And I think the day I'm not interested, and I don't think I can get better, or I think it's more going to come down to that I'm not willing to do one more year. Then I will know it. I will know I know what it takes. And I know that when I don't have that feeling anymore, then I'm not going to go for it. Like, I'm only going to go for it if I believe it's going to happen, if I can be better next year. And after the year I don't think that, then I think either I will just go full in on coaching and just train like 5 times a week. And I mean, that's what I'm saying now. Let's see how it's going to be then.
And if not, that life is great.
Yeah. But if not, I think, I kind of have this little bit vision of setting up a team. I have some great friends that I also help with their program and coach, and I think we could make a pretty good team. So I kind of have that in the back of my mind, and I've also spoken to them about it. So maybe, in 3 years time, 4 years time, we'll go all in on setting up a team to see what we can do. But again, it's hard to predict the future. I would also love to start a family, and whatever chaos that will bring into my life, I'm sure it will also bring a lot of motivation and a lot of drive. And so it's hard to predict, but I think definitely the year I don't want to sacrifice it anymore, because I will know what it will take. That's the year I will stop.
I love that answer. I think I've asked every high level athlete I've had in the podcast what will dictate when they stop. I don't think anyone's had that much clarity, which is basic acknowledgement for what's required to be where you are. And if your goal is to be a better version of yourself every year, then you know what's required to get better. I mean, it's cool to see where that ceiling is. Humans are just always getting better right now, and it's pretty crazy to see how far our sport's evolved and where it's potentially going to get to. We haven't even talked about the CrossFit Games this entire time. So, how was the CrossFit Games?
It was an incredible experience. I was super happy that it could live up to every expectation that I've had or every dream that I've had of it. It was such a great event, and I mean, the organizers and the setup was just, I mean, it's even better than you imagine on TV. And also they do so much for the athletes. And I mean, the fans there and the crowd, I mean, we'd walk through this hallway when we had to go to another event. And seriously, every time we passed through, it didn't even matter if it's just me alone or everyone, people just stand up clapping.
So cool.
Like, and that was just, that was really cool it was kind of being acknowledged for the maybe first time. Like, people think you're legit at something. And I've always dreamed of being really good at something and having that feeling of, wow, other people think that. It's always been important for me myself to think that, but I think just it's also powerful when other people, they want you to meet their kids. And like every meal we had at a restaurant, somebody in the restaurant had paid it for us before we even left.
That's
like
crazy.
So the waiter would come up and say, yeah, somebody already paid your meal, but we can't tell you who it was. That happened like several times. It's like, what? Why would somebody pay our meal? But yeah, it was an incredible experience. I learned a lot. It was also great to see the other athletes. It was actually a lot less, I would say, like intense or competitive than I've experienced at sanctionals. It's like everyone had this sort of calmness about it. Like everybody was here. It'd been a long season to make it here. And it's not that, everybody was buddy, but there was just somehow like a respect, like the way people looked at each other and, the way people shaking each other's hands. There was just some sort of like, well done. Like, you're here, respect. Like, no matter which region you came from, this is an accomplishment to make it here. So it just, the atmosphere was really cool in that way.
Like, you just got me fired up, and I'm not even trying to get to CrossFit Games. But okay, let me backtrack. Like, are you surprised that you made it this year?
That's a hard question to answer. I always expected to make it one year.
Did you think,
but
kind of looking at the format of the season, and then obviously seeing the workouts, because your semi-final, you were online, weren't you?
Yeah.
So when you found out all of that, like, what were you thinking? Or were you not even thinking? It was just do what I can and see what happens?
Yeah, I honestly don't try to think too much about it. Like, control the controllables and the rest will play out like it should play out. If I deserve to make it, I will make it. If I don't deserve to make it, I'll work harder. And the funny thing is that the semifinals, I started day one, I was, I don't know, 10th place or something like that, or 13th place. Day two, I moved up to 7th place. And day three, I managed to make it to the 4th place. And on that day three, I will say I'd finished off the 2 events. I knew the last one was pretty good and the first one wasn't too good. And it was 9 p.m. and the leaderboard was closed, and I was sitting with my whole family and my fiance, and I received a message from one of the other guys in the region who was sitting above me on the leaderboard. And he was like, do you want to share scores? Because the leaderboard is closed and it's not going to be officialized, for another hour or so. But if I know your score, we're going to know what the outcome is. And he knew the scores for like the 3 guys ahead of me, basically. So the 6th, 5th, and 4th place. And they had all basically smashed me in the first workout by like a minute or so. And I had beaten them pretty good in the second workout. But in the second workout, I had received a penalty. And when you receive a penalty, you don't really get told for how many reps or how many seconds you're getting.
What was that workout again?
That was the snatch bar facing burpee workout. So it was like, what was it? Oh no, it was the Gretel. It was Gretel.
Yeah,
sorry.
right.
And I received a penalty on somehow like hip extension on the shoulder to overhead, because some of the reps I'd really tried to make sure my head was so far through my arms that my hip had moved a little bit back as I had like pushed my head so far through. So it was kind of, I was trying to really make sure that I was following the standard to the T, but so that had gotten me a little bit, but luckily it wasn't. I had luckily been so fast in that workout that even though I got a 10-second penalty, I'd still beaten them, but we didn't know. So I was like, okay, for sure it's game over. If the 3 guys ahead of me beat me in the first workout by a minute, getting a few guys in between us will put me far down. And in the second workout, not knowing how big my penalty would be, my chances would be very, very, very low unless a lot of guys would come in between me and them in that workout. And so for 1 hour, I was telling my family, it's over for me this season. That's how it is. Sports, it's brutal. You do everything you can and nothing is ever promised. And that's just one of the things every season you have to look yourself in the mirror and say, are you willing to give absolutely everything you have and have nothing guaranteed? Winning is never guaranteed, no matter what you do. And my family was just crying and everybody was so sad on my behalf. And I was also sad, but just only for a very little bit. I was like, I'm going to get back in the gym tomorrow and I'm going to come for them. So my sadness was quite short, but everybody was so devastated on my behalf. And then at like 10 p.m., like 1 hour later, my phone just started beeping. And I was just, messages was raining. And I was like, people are probably devastated on my behalf. And I opened and it's like, you made it. I'm like, that must be a mistake. So I opened the leaderboard and I immediately scroll down to the bottom because I'm like, for sure some scores have not been verified yet. And all the scores are in, and both my scores have been looked through video wise. So there cannot happen any further drops for me in that sense. And I'm like, that can't be true. And I started telling my family, and I mean, that was just a special moment. Everybody was so unbelievably happy. And I couldn't believe it because for 1 hour, I just told everyone that there was no way that would happen based on the scores. But luckily that second workout had really been, it's just been a very good workout for me. And that pulled me up the leaderboard from 7th to 4th. And yeah, so here we were, just punched the first ticket. And that was just, I was so happy. Like I drove up to my family to be with them for that moment. And whether it had been, the sadness of not making it or the happiness of making it, it was just nice to be with someone that had been supporting me.
That's awesome. Another, you give me tingles again hearing that story. All right. Well, at the CrossFit Games, what was your favorite event? Surely, I'm going to put money on this one. It had to be.
I don't think you would.
Oh, you're not going to say it's a snatch event then?
No, I mean, the snatch event wasn't a PR for me. And that was, I mean, I was happy about that event, but.
Did anyone PR though? I mean, you guys had done so much volume before that. Surely it was, I don't think anyone PR. I think a couple of people got close.
No. Yeah. I mean, I think my favorite event was the first event in the Coliseum, which was the wall climb thruster event. I think that was the event I'd perhaps expected to be worst for me also. Yeah. But I mean, it's unfortunate because it's not on video, but I was just slowly climbing up in that event, and with like 3 rounds to go, Noah Olsen was in the lane next to me. He had finished, and I had like BKG on my right side who was one round ahead of me. And all of a sudden I was creeping up, and Noah Olsen, he was just cheering on me so hard. And he made me realize that, I mean, I always push my hardest, but he kind of gave me just an extra kick. He's like, race, buddy. Like, he was just yelling, race, race, race. Because BKG was walking up to the bar, and I just sent it on the last 2 rounds. And he picked up the last bar like a second before me, and I just pulled myself like straight into the squat, thrust it over, and jumped over, like fly kick it over the finish line, and took him and 3 other guys by half a second. Of course, I mean, the camera didn't catch it, unfortunately, but that was just a really cool moment. I always dreamt of like being the guy who just slides in, giving everything in every event, regardless if it's last place or first place. And I actually have that from, I competed against Justin Medeiros in Medeiros. I'm not really sure if I pronounce it right, but in Filthy 150 in November in 2019. And that was kind of before anybody really knew who he was. But I really paid attention to him because he literally slided in every time. Like, he came flying in, he wasn't looking right or left. He could have won, he could finish last. This guy was just flying in, everything he had, every event. And I think that's just really, I was like, this guy is dangerous, because like, he gives everything, and that he's not concerned with where the others are. He's going to give everything he has every event. And I think just that kind of made me also more like that, everything you have every event. And that means sliding in, because that quarter of a second can mean everything. And I had like 5 experiences at the games this year for 5 events where I overtook 3-4 spots literally in the last 5 seconds of an event, simply because people weren't, maybe either they were burned out or they didn't think somebody was coming, and just finishing so hard every time, just leaving it all on the floor, just really picked up so many spots every time. So I mean, the wall walk thruster event was very special.
It's funny you say that. When I watch the CrossFit Games now, or pretty much any CrossFit event, and I'm a massive fanboy, not only in terms of watching athletes, but like as a coach in the sport, you just learn so much watching other people do it. And, it's like, I feel like I can almost predict the finishing order of every event, not bang on, but pretty close, just by the intention of athletes at the start line or the start mat. You can just see, I had athletes competing in the semifinals who executed really well and who also didn't execute well at all. And you can tell at the start of the event how it's going to unfold most of the time. And it's just a desire. It's not even just to want to hurt, but it's just how much do you want it? And, one of the most frustrating things, I think, as a spectator and a coach, is knowing that someone has put in all this effort for a workout and they walk across the finish line and someone passes them. And, it's like, that is actually the easiest part of the whole thing. You've done all the hard shit already. Just get over that line. And, I think rookies at the CrossFit Games, the ones that stand out, either on one side, it's like the intimidation and probably like the feeling of not maybe deserving to be there, and therefore, kind of turning up and getting their participation medal, versus the people that come out. And I mean, Medeiros is one of these guys, had an amazing rookie season. Like, they're there to like turn heads, and they're there to make an impact immediately. And I thought, watching you, that's what I felt. And I was, even though I've never coached you, we've never actually met in real life, we've only had a bunch of phone calls, I'm like, yes, Andre actually looks like he really wants this, and this is going to be really cool to watch you go. And I've actually seen you do that in every single event. And so I just want, if you're thinking that you're doing it, I want to tell you that I see you doing it, and you should keep on doing it.
Appreciate that. That means a lot, because that is what I want to reflect and And even though I don't come out and win the CrossFit Games in year one, or, you know, it's even taken me quite a lot of years to qualify for the CrossFit Games, I hope that I can make a lot of people perhaps believe in themselves by thinking, you know, you don't have to be the guy who comes out of nowhere and starts winning everything. You can also just be the guy who just gets a little bit better every year. And, you know, at some stage, you know, you're going to be up there and you're going to be mixing it up with the best. Yeah.
How has life or your mindset or anything about you as a person changed because you've made it to the CrossFit Games?
I think it's just made me a lot more, it's given me to some extent, not maturity, but it's giving me more calmness. I can't really explain it because it's been something that's been, I don't know if it's confidence or calmness. Like I think I've always had confidence in believing in myself. Always, since I was a child. I've always believed that if I wanted something, I could get it. And obviously when you get something, that it boosts that even further. But I also always have some sort of and it's not self-doubt, it's just a lot of self-criticism. So it's not that I doubt that I can do something, but I can be very critical of my effort. Like I can finish a session being like, that was terrible, man. Like you did not squeeze every ounce of you that session. And it does, I'm not meaning like you didn't max out your heart rate that session. It's like that warm up, that wasn't very good. Like you could have warmed up better. You could have done better in that session if you had warmed up better. Like, and so I think so I think mindset wise, I don't know if a lot has changed really. I think there's just this calmness about me. I feel that I don't need to prove it anymore to the same extent. And that doesn't mean there's no fire, because there's plenty of fire. It's just, I have done it now. And I think I have a lot of people that never believed that I could make it. And I hope I've put them to bed. And it's not about proving people wrong and all that stuff. That's not really what motivates me. It does, of course, motivate me to some extent, but yeah, I just think there's just a different maturity, a calmness about it. I'm more, maybe more confident in that, you know, all the work I've done, it's paid off. And I think the thing I was most nervous for was I was fearing that I was at the games and I would finish the games and I was thinking, man, I wish I had that coach with me, or I had done this differently, or if I would have had this person, like, you know, seeing some of the other guys having their coaches there and me not having a coach, having my fiance to help me. But I really didn't have that feeling. There was nothing I saw the others do that I thought, okay, next year I'm definitely going to be using that technique or using that tool, or and also coaching myself the majority also just gave me such a calmness of, you know, if I would have made it with a coach, I would have had the mindset of, I can never do it without this person. But now I've done it without pretty much anyone to some extent the past 1 year or 1.5 years. And that's just been a really nice feeling. That doesn't mean I will never have a coach. It just means that, you know, you can get far alone, and you have to trust that you also know your stuff, because I also can doubt myself a lot on that, you know, how smart are you? What do you know? But there's just no blueprint for it. And I think this year I just, you know, it really just made it clear to myself, there's no blueprint. The protocols you have been using have clearly been working. It doesn't mean they're perfect, and you're going to keep having to learn and to bring in experts to master it better. But, you know, believe in yourself, you know your stuff also. And so I think it's more from a coaching perspective and programming perspective that I've gained more confidence.
It really does sound, when you're talking about this concept of calmness, it really does sound like confidence is a big part in it. It sounds like there was, you know, like not a lack of trust, but, you know, you're one of the few guys in the sport who is writing their own programming. You're one of the few guys in the sport whose coach is not a CrossFit coach. You know, you're one of the few, like, there's a lot of things actually you do very differently that I think you're you're being, you're, what's the word? You're paving the way in many aspects, I think. And of course, if you were to fail and come and not do anything you'd set out to do, then you probably would have been like, okay, I need to probably do what everyone else is doing because what I tried didn't work. But I think you take a lot of confidence. And, certainly for myself, I look at, I think, training in a very similar way that you do. And I think perhaps a lot of that comes from my background, my early education as a coach with people like Charles Poliquin. And, I've certainly over the last 10 years second guessed my techniques. What role does a split squat play? What role does a cable row play in CrossFit? What role does, leg extension and hamstring curls? But I've always used it because personally it's felt good. And I can see the validity. But when no one else is doing it, you're kind of like, maybe I'm wasting my time on this. And you see people being successful. You see people being successful squatting 3 times a week and never doing anything else but barbell and dumbbell work. So I think, the fact that you've done it, I honestly think that we're going to see more people because of people like you start to change up the methodology and their approach as to how they get after it and how they peak for performance. And I think a big part of this as well, which I think athletes don't talk about enough, is the longevity part as well. And, it's a big difference between athletes who make it 1 year and athletes who make it 5 years and athletes who make it 10 years. I think, there's got to be, some people have been successful in the sport by not integrating any of that stuff, but the sport's also changing and people are getting stronger and fitter and the volume's going to continue to increase. And therefore I think the training methodology has to change as well. So I don't know.
And everybody's different, right?
And everyone's different.
I know you also speak a lot about, this stress in life and there's so many stressors that all contribute to training, and it's just so different how big of a stress kind of capacity you have also, like, and to some extent I don't feel that I can handle like crazy amounts of volume. So like this way has just been allowing me to train still a lot, but it just doesn't smash me the same way. And I think it's not everyone who can do that 3 times a week squatting, and it's okay because it's not for everyone, but for some people it is great. And I also think the sport is just so young. We still don't know, like 5-7 years from now, like you can be wrecked. We don't really know.
Who knows?
But it's super interesting to see how the sport evolves and the training methodologies, and I think we still have so much to learn from other sports. And I think being open-minded it's really going to be beneficial, because we can really get into that bubble of how everyone in CrossFit does it, and compare ourselves to them rather than compare ourselves to how they do it in powerlifting or in bodybuilding or in triathlon. And I think there's always give and takes for everything. And as a coach, I think there's no better way to test it on yourself, to go through the experiences and to be able to deliver to other people.
Yeah, going back to the stress piece that you just talked about, I think you're an athlete who is aware of that. You're aware of the impact of not even, I mean, yes, it is stress, and we talk about stress. I think most people hear the word stress and think, well, I'm not stressed, it can't be a bad thing. But it's stimulus. The impact, if your stimulus is anything but eating, training, and recovering, then it's essentially taking away from your ability to eat, sleep, and recover. But I think as an athlete, it's a blessing to know all that, and sometimes a curse. And I think sometimes the more and an intelligent guy like yourself, who's also a passionate coach and is helping other people, sometimes when you start to know too much of that stuff, you're like, fuck, what am I doing? Like, I'm doing everything I shouldn't be doing. But, at the same time, the more and more awareness you build, it actually becomes a massive advantage, a really great tool that you can use to your advantage, knowing when to push and when to pull back, knowing how to manage volume appropriately and intensity versus probably you were probably like me 5-10 years ago, which was like, we didn't know any different. And every day was just go all out and see what happens.
Yeah, I definitely think, like you said, it is a challenging, like sometimes easier just to have the athlete hat on, which is, follow the program and get it done. And sometimes when you have too much of the coaching hat on and over analyzing things, like it can just disturb you. And I think that's sometimes also challenging. But I try to be good at, being able to flip the switch and say, now we work and now you're an athlete. And yeah, okay, like not trying to be too over analytic. That's also why I'm really interested in learning a lot, and I have a passion for it, but I'm also holding myself a little bit back on it. I'm trying not to consume too much like educational pieces for now. Like that's something I want to save for my life after, for coaching, better and being full focus on that. And just try to, do the work. Like I love learning from Kasper, but when he coaches me, I'm also just there as an athlete, and he tells me to push harder or do one more rep, and I don't question a thing. I'm just, when I'm there, I just want to feel like I'm a machine, and whatever he tells me to do, I do. And that's definitely something that I'm really enjoying by being coached one-on-one. And I've never actually been coached one-on-one before, and I've done a lot of PTs myself, and I've realized, and I always kind of question, like, wow, like paying so much money for just an hour of training, like every week, so many times, is that really worth it? But having now experienced it myself, it's totally worth it. Like it's so nice. Like every session I've had with him, I always just I feel so exhausted and happy at the same time. It's just, I feel like I'm 15 years old again. I'm on a training camp with American football, and nothing else matters than, just that session or that training camp experience. And you just forget everything else, and you're there 100%. And that's, I mean, and I try to think, why can't I have that? Like, can I set my life up to be a training camp? Where it's just, when you're on a training camp, you're not worried about, like, everything is on pause. Everything else doesn't matter. You're just worrying about training, having a good time with your buddies, eat, sleep, be ready for the next session. And if you could create that environment for yourself, like let's say you didn't have to make any money, or you had inherited like billions of dollars, and you could just focus on that solely. Like, how do you create that environment? I mean, I'm still striving to get closer to that, because there's just something powerful about, that's what you do. Like you do that one thing and just try to be, you think about it, and that's all you do.
Yeah. I think also though, there's like, how much focus can you give to one thing, and for how long?
Yeah, true. There's the benefit of having other things in life as well. That's also why I love the coaching part as well, because it also distracts me in a good way. It brings my head to other things.
Yeah. I think that's essentially what we all do when we periodize a training program. Like we're putting in blocks of time where the intensity is more, and the intensity is not just the training intensity, but it's just like the sacrifices and the focused. There's a time in your season where that should be all you're doing. But I think where so many athletes perhaps get it wrong is they put that level of intensity too early, and when the time comes when you need to step it up another level, they just don't have that other gear to give. No. Talk me to one of getting close to the end here, Andre. But what does your off season look like? When you finish the games, did you take a break?
Yeah, I've obviously been trying to speak to a lot of the veterans at the CrossFit Games to learn from them and to see, what tips and tricks they have. And I mean, everybody was very willing and very happy to help the rookies, I felt, which was super nice. And
it's cool that you asked them.
Yeah. And
who did you ask out of interest?
I tried to speak a lot with Brent Fikowski.
I feel like you two are quite similar, quite analytical.
Yeah, I felt like he was the one I looked up to perhaps the most, in the way he was, being analytical and he had his very like strict routines, and I also like to have very strict routines with, with the food and the nutrition and the warm up, and like he was very it was very deliberate, everything he did, and that's something I also really like to do. And so I spoke a lot with him, and him and a lot of the other veterans, they really recommended taking a lot of time off after the games, because this is your only chance to do it. And some of them said, a month, and some said less, and some said more. And I think I found my sweet spot with 2 weeks. I said to myself, I'm not going to set a time that I'm going to go back to training. I'm just going to take it one day at a time, but just spend more time with my family and taking care of house stuff, and just spending time with friends also that I've perhaps been neglecting, and been a bit not too selfish, but selfish about. And that was 2 weeks for me. Like, I couldn't do more in 2 weeks. So, like, because I was fired up after the games. I wasn't drained. I wasn't beat up. Like, I didn't want to go to the after party. I wanted to go to bed and go to work. Like, and I was very happy that I felt like that. So my off season was just 2 weeks, and then I spent also the 2 weeks, like, because I'm doing my own program that obviously takes also some time. So I wanted to really, sit down and, like, what is the 221, 222 season going to look for me, and how I'm going to structure it and build it up. And, I had calls with Kasper, I had calls with my nutritionist, and like, how are we going to do it? Like, to be the best possible shape I can be for next year, the goal of making it to the CrossFit Games again, and then hopefully doing even better. How do we get there? And then try to build that protocol, or build that schedule, and then also see, with off-season competitions, I know that if I need to be in the best shape of my life next year, I can't have too many off-season competitions, because it disturbs the training. And I don't feel that I need to go collect a lot of experiences to be better at the games. It was an experience that held me back this year, and it usually is never experience. I don't know, because I've always been doing competitive sports. So game day, I don't fear game day or pressure or those kind of situations. It always comes down to just not being good enough shape. And I find that's the best thing it could come down to. I rather want to just, man, I got my ass kicked in this event. Good. At least I didn't, if it came down to me making huge strategic mistakes or nutritional mistakes or those kind of things, then I would really beat myself up. But when it just comes down to, man, that guy was way better than me. Good. Like, I know how to fix that. I know how to, get back into training and build towards that. So until next year, I'm going to do Rogue Invitationals, which I've been really fortunate to be invited to. And that's just an incredible event, no qualifiers, which means I don't really need to peak early for qualifiers or anything like that. The competition itself is all paid for, flights, hotel, plus you're guaranteed almost $6,000 just from finishing in, 20th to 11th place. And I'm not going to peak for that event. I might have a small peak. I mean, I will have to do a lot more sport specific stuff. Luckily, with the newer approach for this season, I am doing a lot of sport specific stuff, like from like every day. So that's also going to allow me to just be in more CrossFit shape all year, which is nice. I don't know if Dubai, how they're going to do it this year. I've heard rumors that maybe it will be invites based on games placements. If so, then if I don't have to do any qualifiers and it's not a huge expense, then I will definitely probably also be going there. But that's it. I wanna focus on the main event, and it's amazing that I get to compete at Rogue as well. If I get to compete at Dubai, that will also be amazing. But they will only be stepping stones for what really matters for me.
Awesome, Andre. What a closing speech that was. Hey, it's been an absolute pleasure. We're going to wrap up there. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I don't even know how we're going to what the title of this podcast is going to be, because we basically talked about everything. But mate, you know, super analytical, super insightful. Just love your approach, you know, the way that you coach yourself and obviously the way you compete as well. And I feel like I keep on seeing so much growth in you in every aspect. And that's just really cool. So maybe we'll have to just do this catch up every year.
I'll be happy to. And, you know, I find a lot of inspiration also what you guys do over in Hong Kong. And I have a wish to one day come over and just, you know, train and just have some good coffee chats and see how you guys do things. Cause like, I really enjoy following, just how much growth you guys have been through the past many years with, you know, starting the generic program and, you know, seeing that grow and all the other programs. And I also follow all the coaches that you bring into the team. And I love how each of them has their thing and their strength. And it just seems that you guys have a super well-rounded team with so many different kind of experts or people with different like abilities and passions. And it just, it's also just with all the bodybuilding equipment you've now purchased. And I just think it's nice to see that you're always growing and evolving, because I think that's going to be key to have a successful business. And so thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, mate. Well, I really appreciate the kind words. Thank you for sharing. Andre, until next time, I'll have all your contact details in the notes. People know it already. But thank you very much, my friend. I'm looking forward to seeing you this season.
Thanks for having me.